we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Great to see a lot of interest in a topic that is certainly top of mind for us, and understand is top of mind for a lot of organizations today, which is how we can keep ourselves secure. For those I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I'm Elliott. I'm the CEO of Velonex, and I'm going to be facilitating a conversation with Jared Morse on our team today. Jared is our Executive Vice President of Security and works closely with our team on developing security solutions for our clients, keep everybody secure while staying operational. So one of the trends that we have seen, and we've seen with an alarming increase, is the amount of cybercrime that's happening. A stat I've referenced to a few folks, if you go back to 2023, I don't think we have the numbers yet for 2024, cybercrime is the third largest economy globally. There was roughly 8 trillion USD spent on cybercrime in 2023, putting it only behind the US and China for the largest economies globally. And a big reason and a big driver behind that is business emails being compromised. We've all gone through a wave of implementing security solutions such as multi-factor authentication, but we're still seeing an alarming increase in business email compromise. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about MFA, about what we're seeing in the wild, and what we can do and what you can do to keep your organizations secure. So I'll start off with a question for you, Jared. What is MFA?
So MFA is it's used for verifying a user is who they claim to be. In technology, there are 3 factors that are used. It's something you know, like a password or a PIN, something you have, which could be a mobile token or a hardware token, which is like a digital badge, and then something you are, which would be some form of biometric, fingerprint, facial recognition, etc. And so multi-factor authentication adds the layer of protection by requiring 2 out of those 3, at least 2 of those 3 factors, in order for someone to access data.
Awesome. So I'm a business owner. I have MFA enabled. I have Microsoft security defaults turned on. I'm protected, right?
You're better protected than if you don't. Security defaults will require all users to register for MFA using the Microsoft Authenticator app, which is inherently more secure than using email or text as that second factor. But MFA is just one layer. And in cybersecurity, no one layer is ever enough. There are just too many ways available to get around it. And it's available to not just your highly skilled hackers. It's out there for sale on the dark web.
Yep. And Jared, just heads up, your microphone's cutting in and out a bit in the event you've got another input there. Awesome. So yeah, as Jared mentioned, it's just one layer. Another point to note is that if we wind back the clock 3 or 4 years, Microsoft had security defaults where you could enable or enforce MFA for all the users in your organization. Microsoft security defaults are an old school method to go about implementing a secondary factor of authentication. It's a method that's being deprecated. We look at new Microsoft tenants for the first time, and we frequently find issues around misconfiguration of MFA tools and MFA settings. So we see a lot of organizations who think they're secure because they think they have MFA as an on or off switch, but there's a little more nuance to that. And it doesn't just apply to the Microsoft ecosystem, although a lot of our conversation today is going to be predominantly based around that. So even if we do have MFA in place, we're seeing an alarming increase in the ability for malicious actors to bypass standard MFA protocols. Jared, what are some techniques that we're seeing actively being used in the real world today?
Okay, so if my mic cuts out, just wave at me and I will turn off Bluetooth and go that route. So the easiest way is push bombing, also known as push fatigue. All right, bear with me 1 second here. I'm going to switch over.
Yeah. I'll cover that. Push bombing, you can imagine somebody pushing an alert to an authenticator app. You get a pop-up request and just continually pushing. And what they're doing is they're spraying and praying and hoping that a user will approve a request that isn't actually coming from them because they think they're being prompted for additional reauthentication from an application that they're using. Jared, are you back on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right. So I caught partially what you said. You covered push bombing, it sounded like, right?
Yep.
Okay, another easily exploited technology is what's called SS7 protocol. And that stands for Signaling System Number 7, which is an older protocol or set of protocols that control information exchanged between telephone networks and data networks. So caller ID, call forwarding, and SMS or texting utilizes this. And because it's old, it has insufficient access controls that they had not thought of at the time that were necessary. The traffic is unencrypted, and there's a lack of authentication. And the result is that those transmissions can be intercepted quite easily. So one of the most common types of the SS7 exploitation is the SIM swap. And this is simply a form of social engineering where the threat actors are calling up and convincing the the cellular carriers to transfer control of a user's phone number to a SIM that is owned and controlled by the threat actor. So that just means that any authentication that's sent to the phone via text or phone call, that it's sent right to that threat actor.
So
then,
if we,
okay.
well, I was just gonna say, let's talk for a minute about those two. So if we see social engineering happening with the cell carriers, and we know and see legacy vulnerabilities being exploited with telecommunication networks, what are the implications for a business of these being out in the wild?
So, I mean, simply they're susceptible to having those communications intercepted. Aside from that, they're susceptible to denial of service attacks and fraudulent transactions. It's utilized a lot with bank communications to gain access to bank accounts so that verification on mobile apps are intercepted, and then the threat actors gained access to an account to do what they want with it.
Yeah. So some organizations, when we're helping them improve their security posture, will get pushback from their users of not wanting to put yet another authentication app on their phones. Or maybe you're working with sign in to a service, that has been heavily reliant on text messaging for their secondary factor authentication. Because of these two techniques being used to be able to bypass standard security protocols, current standard best practices is to move all of your 2FA where you can away from text messages or SMS. And then Jared, token replay, and this is one that we're seeing most prevalently and is one of the more concerning trends, and one we're going to deep dive. Talk a little bit about what is token replay.
So essentially, token replay is it's taking advantage of this digital badge that you are using when you enter in your code. So if you get phished, right, you click on a link, you enter your credentials. Those credentials are stored in this token, and if a threat actor can either gain access to your desktop through malware, or they set up a fake site to grab that cookie, then they have that everything you need to gain access to your account. They don't need the login credentials. They just have that cookie. They can access it from anywhere.
So I have cybersecurity. I have MFA turned on, and my IT team is monitoring things. Wouldn't there be some sort of alert or notification that a token's been stolen?
Potentially, if you have the right licensing, Entra ID P2, which will cover a little bit the licensing towards the end, it does have token anomaly alerting, among other triggers that could generate an alert, but without that license, it's limited to location-based and activity-based alerts, which are valuable. But if you don't have a policy or workflow set up to automatically block access, or an MDR, managed detection and response solution where you have a SOC actively monitoring those alerts, it's easy to miss. And likely by the time you realize or you get them and you realize something's wrong, it's already happened. It's too late.
So say I get a phishing email. I click on the link, but I never entered my credentials. I'm good. I'm safe, right?
You might be. However, the other way, besides getting your credentials through you entering them, is putting, that link could download malware. So at that point, they can either use that malware to steal the session cookie, or install a keylogger so that any information you're entering into a legitimate site, they're able to see and grab.
I think a lot of users and a lot of organizations maybe aren't aware of how the technology works with tokens and how those tokens can be extracted. We see through a lot of the phishing training that we do with our clients, users and organizations who say they don't click or they've never clicked on anything, where we're able to see a definitive proof where that's not always true. I think for a lot of people, it's fear of backlash, embarrassment that they maybe were susceptible to some form of social engineering, and they catch it somewhere along the way and they think that they're okay, but they may not be. And so we encourage everyone to normalize. If you have any questions, raise the hand, report to people. If you think that there's any possibility that you accidentally clicked on something that you weren't supposed to, have your IT administrator take a look, because there is a chance that the mere act of clicking on a link in a phishing email could create a compromise in your environment. So we want to take a minute and show a demonstration of a token replay in action. And this is a video from the wonderful people at KnowBe4. They're a partner of ours that we work with for phishing training and cybersecurity training with a number of our clients. And it'll take just a minute for this video to load. It's a pretty quick video, but Jared, just talk through and explain what's happening here.
All right, so here we have a Gmail account with an email that appears to be from LinkedIn. If you open it up and you look at the address, it's actually not it's not LinkedIn, it's LLNKED in.com. But the user may not notice that. And if you click interested, it's going to redirect you to the LinkedIn website where, oh, meanwhile, over here, the fake website, this is a terminal session that the attacker has set up to intercept the communications. We'll come back to that. So you enter the credentials, sign in. It's going to take you over to the second factor verification, which in this case is the code, mobile code to the phone. Code is entered, and here you are logged into the actual LinkedIn account. Then they're going to take you over to the terminal that the attacker is using. And so this is what they see. They see email address, they see unencrypted password, but that's not really what they're looking for. They want that token cookie, which is the long string. So they copy that string, and they're going to open up a new browser session, go to the real LinkedIn site, and they don't need to log in here. They don't need email address, password. All they got to do is go into the developer tools, which is accessible in any browser, paste in that cookie. Just like that. And then refresh the window. And they're in.
Yep. So pretty striking stuff at how simple it can be if a token is extracted for an account to be compromised. And as Jared mentioned earlier, there's certain alerting and policies that can be configured, although they do have to be, and they have to be configured thoughtfully by your system administrator to alert around these. But to the website, you know, in this case to LinkedIn, or in the world of Microsoft, if you were to go through the sign-in logs, it looks like a legitimate sign-in. You see the user logging in, you see the user providing the correct authentication protocols and secondary authentication protocols being satisfied, because that session token is a valid session token from the authentication system. And so this is something that we're seeing with an increasing and rapid and alarming rate of being used. And a big reason is the proliferation of generative AI, ChatGPT. It used to be that to get access to the tools, to develop the knowledge of how to run these sorts of schemes, you needed a certain bar of technical expertise. In 2025, you need a little bit of ingenuity in terms of how you ask ChatGPT a question, and pretty much anybody can have the tools at their fingertips to run these sorts of schemes and attacks.
Just to add to that, they also make it even easier by selling kits. Everything, pretty much turnkey solution to hack an account on the dark web.
So what can we do about it?
Well, for starters, we have here the shortening the token lifetime, which just means, so by default, the token is going to last between 60 and 90 minutes, depending on the type of token. But so you can shorten that so that if it's 30 minutes or less, or some number that you deem reasonable, so that they're unable to use it beyond that time. The problem there is that if you shorten it too much, it means you're requiring your users to authenticate more frequently, and then you're more susceptible to the fatigue. So it's a balance. It's a balance between securing yourself, but also allowing your employees to be productive, and not. It's like the whole thing with trying to remember different passwords. When they get too complex and you have too many different ones without a password manager, people tend to come up with easier ways to remember them or write them down. And it defeats the whole purpose of setting it up in the first place. Another protection is CAE, which is continuous access evaluation. So this is, with Microsoft, this is a tool they have to, it continuously evaluates the security state of a user session. So this will help in detecting and automatically revoking tokens if there are any changes in the user's security posture or anomalies, such as location changes. If you're always logging in from Texas and suddenly you have logins 2 minutes later from another country that couldn't possibly be you, that's going to flag that and automatically block it. And then the third most, this is the best way, the most valuable way to protect against it, is through conditional access policies. So these are basically going to be policies you set up, and if anything falls out of compliance, or we're going to get into some of the specific ones, but if anything doesn't match up, then it blocks access and prevents the user from getting in.
For sure. Sarah Michaels raised the question around, does BitLocker and does virus protection protect against these concerns? The short answer is kind of. So the endpoint security solution that we use will help protect against malware getting installed on your device. The cybersecurity training and phishing simulation training will help train users what not to click on. And if we're using an XDR endpoint solution, it will extend and provide additional protection beyond what Microsoft offers to hopefully help prevent malicious links from ever making it into your users' inboxes. So I'm assuming there that you've fully subscribed as an organization to all of our recommended stack from a security and a training standpoint. However, what we're talking about here with the conditional access policies that we'll go into in a little more detail is making sure that we are getting granular in how we are configuring and controlling two-factor authentication in your Microsoft environment. If you have done a Microsoft security score improvement project with our team, you should be in a good place here. And if you haven't, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your local team that you normally work with to talk about this. So Jared, you raised conditional access policies. Conditional access policies, by definition, they're conditional. So there's a wide variety of them. Here's a number of examples. Pick 2 out of this list that you think are noteworthy to go into a little more detail on.
So I'll start with the first one, requiring Intune compliant or hybrid Azure AD joined devices. So Intune, for those who don't know, is a Microsoft device management tool, and it allows you to configure baseline policies for your devices, such as encryption, endpoint protection, etc. And it'll require your devices to be compliant with these policies, or in the case of hybrid Azure AD or now Entra ID, it's going to require that you be joined to the Entra ID in order to access the resources. So in this situation, if you're not on a PC that is compliant or managed by Entra ID, then you're not going to be able to access the data. And this is especially beneficial to companies with remote workforce, where traditional Active Directory is in an office, or you can set up policies to allow that office IP address to access it. But where you have people spread out basically from any location, it's a way to still protect them as long as they have access to that device. So let's see another one. Mobile application management. So this one, you're using mobile application management in policies in Intune to secure data on mobile devices without full device enrollment. So this allows the IT to control the corporate data on users' mobile apps like Outlook and OneDrive, SharePoint, without having to manage the entire device. So, and therefore it's less intrusive to the user. That's one of the things with mobile device management is, if this is my personal device, I don't want the organization controlling my device. It's mine. So with mobile application management, you're just controlling the organization's apps and the data that you access with those apps. So BYOD situations, it's perfect for managing those scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically, when we go through building out conditional access policies for an organization, we spend some time monitoring how user profiles are logging in and authenticating, whether it's to their email service, to the applications, to other third-party apps. Because the idea here is you want to build conditional access policies that make your organization more secure, that do not put too many frictions for actual work and operations getting done, and do not create, potential perverse incentives. As Jared mentioned earlier, somebody's getting asked to re-authenticate with two-factor authentication too frequently, they're going to get fatigue. They might complain, or even worse, they might be susceptible to a push bomb because they're just being asked to re-authenticate all the time. So there's no one size fits all. There are definitely some recommended standards and best practices and approaches. Some organizations, we would say, block access to every country aside from approved countries. Some organizations have users or owners who travel a lot, in which case we need to get a little more granular and nuanced in how we build these out. I want to briefly touch on, as well as, Microsoft licensing. So to be able to configure these security solutions, we have to have them available. And Microsoft has a lot of different licensing features. What we're talking about with conditional access policies, you need at least what they call intra-ID P1 and Intune. For some additional higher end and more nuanced controls, we also need intra-ID P2. Now, the good news is Microsoft does include some of these in their bundles. So most people probably don't know the licensing intra-ID P1. They probably know we're on Business Standard, or we're on Business Premium, or we're on Microsoft Enterprise E3. So if we have access to these tools, we can configure these features. Each one of these intra-ID P1, P2, and Intune can be bought as standalone licenses, but it's usually not cost effective. So again, if you haven't talked about licensing with your local account manager and service team, now is probably a good time to revisit that conversation. Make sure that you have the right features in place to be able to configure these tools correctly in the first place. And then note at the bottom, Microsoft makes a lot of things complicated. So we try to be thoughtful in creating strategies to be as cost effective as we can. And so the right solution for your organization is going to differ organization to organization. So finally, we offer a free Microsoft security assessment to anybody that would like to dive in and take a look, not just at what we covered today around identity security and conditional access policies, but other pieces of the security layer and security fabric. So feel free. We'll post the link to this website where you can schedule in the chat thread here. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Jared, for sharing your knowledge and information. And we'll open it up, hang around for a few minutes. If anybody has any questions or wants to talk about anything we discussed today, we're more than happy to. Yes, Dorothy.
I've always been curious about when the message pops up about cookies, accept all or reject them. What should we be doing? Or does it matter? I just don't understand what that is.
Yeah, I mean, so personally, basically they're, the cookies are there to track your activity. Some of them are there for functional purposes for the site and are required. So I typically will accept the ones that I have to, that are required. And otherwise, all of the rest of them, I don't need them tracking me for for marketing purposes and that information. So I disable all of them, all the other ones. And sometimes, I used to just keep the certain ones that I thought were performance based. And I realized that I've never once disabled cookies and really had it affect me on a website.
Okay, that's what I thought, but does it open you up to vulnerability if you have accepted them in the past?
It's more about information gathering. It's not necessarily a vulnerability directly, but the more information they have about your browsing activity, it's more information at use in their hands. It's good practice to, and hopefully they're automatically being cleared out from time to time on a regular basis. And so
Okay.
there's no direct vulnerability from it typically. But they're gathering information and strategizing.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have another one as far as the multi-factor codes. If we have some for our, say, our SharePoint information and it's done every 60 days, that's probably not a great practice, is it? Where you have to like submit well, I don't even know what we do. I guess I enter a password to get access to it every 60 days.
Yeah, I think the short answer is it depends. Is it an automatic revoke of the token every 60 days, but there's additional conditional access policies in place? So like a common one that we'll configure with a lot of clients is to re-authenticate if logged in from a new location, if logged in from a new browser. But because users get frustrated, and again, you start to get fatigue, and then you start to get some unwanted behaviors if you're forcing valid reauthentication all of the time. So we'd have to take a look specifically at your environment. I know the answer would be nice if it was yes or no. It really kind of depends on what additional authentication policies are put in place.
Yeah, just to add to that too, there could be different settings within the same organization. If you have, people that are working out of the office every day from a trusted IP address, that's going to be a lot less necessary to do it frequently than it is if you have someone out in the field, like a construction crew that has tablets that are out at different locations every day. They're going to need to authenticate more frequently.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. And if you have a VPN, like we have a remote server, so I have my VPN working all the time. Does that protect you?
So it does protect you, but nothing is, all inclusive or protects you from it. So that'll encrypt the traffic going to and from your computer to the server.
Oh, just to the server, not anywhere else.
Or to whatever, like it depends how you're connected. If you're connected sometimes it's limiting you to what resources you're able to connect to. So, a VPN connection won't necessarily be opened up to the entire network or everything,
Oh,
on that corporate network, but it doesn't protect information from going over the VPN. If your device has, if you open up an email, you download malware by clicking on a link, that can still travel across the VPN.
oh, okay.
So yeah, there are additional, even within the VPN configuration, there are just policies that you want to put in place. I give just one example: split tunneling, which is, split tunneling when you're connected to a VPN. If you that would allow you to access the internet, your own local internet, rather than going through the VPN and then out the corporate internet. But that's a vulnerability to the organization because you're connected to their network, but you have potentially, an internet connection that they're not in control of. So they can't protect you from downloading something and then having it, access the corporate resources.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you everyone again for attending today. If you have any follow-up questions on anything discussed, please don't hesitate to reach out to the team. You can submit a service ticket. You can go to the website here to schedule a security assessment. Hope that this was useful and enlightening for everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.